be a world war on the scale that there was again.
I hope not. It'd be a totally different war, won't it?
I hate to think what it'd be like. It would be nothing. Absolutely nothing. And what a waste.
I'm thinking of all these people, Facebook and social media, it's like it's got the bad out of people.
The Second World War and the First World War were so terrible. I hope that people, like the countries, have learned.
No, if there is a war, you've only got to have some of the lunatics running the countries like we've got nowadays, and that'll be it.
All over.
It won't last long, but it'll be more devastating than anything anyone's ever seen.
We're on the, well, they call it dancing, but we're after a fashion, and then we join in with the choir as well.
Yeah.
So more voices, the better.
We're singing the old songs that we know. Fortunately, we don't have to learn them because we know all the words.
Yes.
I was ambushed with the building of the aeroplane, which is on display today. I was quite prepared to make an aeroplane, something modest, so I thought. And when I spoke to Ron, he said it's got to be 8 feet wide. So over a period of weeks, yes, I made an 8-foot aeroplane.
There's a choir and an Age UK choir as well, and it's very fun as well because you get to like enjoy it with the old people as well.
And there's a narrator that is really nice. He's really clear and loud with the microphone.
Yeah.
Kerry told us we were in the play.
Yes, I arrived to work and they said, you're George Formby.
And I was told you're the narrator, if that's
That was
right.
it.
But everybody mucks in, so it's great.
Also, the play, like it's like memories. Some of it's from our school's logbook, and some is from their memories. So they probably also feel a bit happy. Well, not happy, but like they feel good that people can know like what they've been through, and they might have known people that were in that situation.
Yeah, and it's nice because I think the youngest person doing the play is like 8, I think, and then the oldest one is probably 90 or something.
You're on a tightrope between them recognising obviously in the war people die, but then also you're not trying to send them into being really morbid or actually upsetting or traumatising them. So I'm very conscious of that fine line, and actually it's better to think about like the play where we actually looked at actually the effect it had on children's lives rather than the number of people who died, because for the children you've got to put it down into smaller bite-sized pieces so it's not actually overwhelming.
We live in a society today where perhaps younger people don't respect their elders quite like they did maybe 30, 40 years ago, and I think these types of projects are really important in terms of our local community, but also in terms of the history and remembering the sacrifice that our older generations made so that we can sit and enjoy plays like this in the country that we live in.
I feel quite passionately about remembrance and about the war. My granddad was a prisoner of war, so growing up I always heard his stories. My granddad actually passed away when I was 11, but I then had a really close relationship with my nan. But then my nan told me her versions of what happened in the war, and it was just a really completely different world that they lived in, and I think having that first-hand experience of being able to talk to her really made it come alive.
Experiences. Yeah. Oh yeah, we had experiences with them. We talked about what it was like, could you remember when you were children at the war? And I think Nora said, I remember Nora the knit nurse.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, because when the little girl checks, you're clean, we'll take you. And of course that must have been how it was.
Do you remember when sweets came off the ration?
I do.
So did I. I always remember that. I went down to the sweet shop, clutching my sixpence, I think it was I had.
Yeah.
And I bought a whole Mars bar, and I was sick as a dog as soon as I put it in there.
I remember that as well. Yeah. I was down at Margate when they came off ration, and we was in the sweet shop the day before, and there was nothing. And it was the day we came home. We went round the sweet shop, and I'd never seen so many sweets in my life. It was stacked from floor to ceiling with Mars bars.
Oh yeah, brilliant.
And they were big.
They were, but they were about this long.
You talked, didn't you? And the old telephone, I remember someone used to have it wind it up or something. And the exchange. Hello,
And you had to put a
operator.
penny in the thing.
Oh yes. Yes, we used to have telephone boxes on the corner of the streets, didn't we?
I can remember, because we lived in a tenement building overlooking Euston Railway line, and the shelters were in the cellar. And I can remember my mum, she had stockings on, and they hadn't got a lot of money, so I was in the cot, I can remember this, she'd roll those stockings down like that, right down there. She'd get about there and the siren would go. I won't tell you what she said. Pick me out of the cot, down 3, 4, 5 flights of stairs, down into the cellar, and all I can remember is them singing what we've just been singing.
There'll be love and laughter and peace ever after tomorrow when the world is free. The shepherd will tend his sheep, the valley will bloom again, and Jimmy will go to sleep in his own little room again. There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover tomorrow when the world is free.
You can't have any conception of what it's like except we see it in the Middle East and these awful sights in the Middle East. Well, that actually happened on the doorstep. And if you went up to London, and the most extraordinary thing, my parents took me up to London. Everywhere was flat except St Paul's Cathedral, just stood in the middle of all the rubbish. And it was, you know, it was quite a weird thing to see.
You know, I think when we were sort of growing up and we saw something so horrific, it was just, I mean, it was just such a shock. But you can almost see now, it's like,
not again.
Here we go again. You know,
It's sad, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's, but, you know, there's sort of those examples where, you know, in Syria, and I remember them interviewing this child who was no more than 7 years old, and what really resonated with me was the fact these bombs were going off. That child didn't flinch.
No, it's every
It
day
was
to them.
just, this is an everyday thing, and I think, you know, if they get a better understanding of the horrors of war and why they do it, you know, all the
They're
better.
tomorrow's citizens, aren't they?
Unfortunately, with war and such conflicts, things become invented, and the inventions change the world.
The kids play their war on a little tablet, don't they?
And they think they can't die, because you get another life.
Yeah.
That's why you're getting all these kids shot and stabbed and goodness knows what.
Yeah.
You know, it don't matter, he's got another life, but he hadn't. The trend now is to build a blooming brick wall around your house and put big metal gates across it.
Security lights and all the rest of it.
Facebook and social media is like it's got the bad out of people. Not everybody, like some people misuse it. Like for an example, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, what he said to South Korea really upset them, and they started talking about nuclear bombs, and nuclear bombs could cause great effects.
I think there's some technology that's good, obviously. Yeah. But I think there's some that's definitely not improved life. Facebook's a good idea, but it has big buts along it, unfortunately, because there are people who behave badly. And it's the people, it's not the technology.
I they don't have to go through what, not my generation, but the generation before me, my mother and father, because he was in the First World War. I hope nobody ever has to go through that.
I assume if you don't learn about the war, you won't know how much it gave an impact onto the world and how strong it was, how many soldiers and people went into war to defend their countries and not take over, because it's impacted the world so much that it's a very big time in history.
And it's hard, I think, for them to sort of really
take
you know,
that
that
in.
really happened. Yes, it really did. So, I think the more understanding about it, the better. And they really seem to enjoy it and encompass it. I honestly think that.
The stories get passed down, but eventually there'll be no one to pass them down. So it's important that we keep memorabilia and we do pass on these stories. So that's how I feel about it. I think it's important to pass it on.
So we understand what they've gone through, and we need to respect that and not misuse it, because life's short. We actually have the advantage because they've done hard work to have peace in this world.
Some people learn.
Because I think they actually realised, after so many people have died, that they realised war shouldn't happen again.
There are those who long for something they know that they will never attain. They suffer as though there is nothing they can do to change this. They live in a society in which they feel powerless and alienated as the world seems to go on without them. Incel stands for involuntarily celibate. Generally, incels believe that sex is something they are entitled to and blame external forces for their predicament. Incels often meet online on forums and image boards to discuss their experiences with women, or lack thereof. Over time, these communities have brought about their own ideologies and specialised terms to classify the world as they see it.
Incel is a term that is overall very relatively new, and a lot of people give it different definitions. The definition that we give it on the site is someone who is not able to get into a relationship, a romantic relationship, despite wanting to. Now, a lot of people have been self-defined as incels, even though we don't believe they are. For example, you have, 16-year-olds, right? That they're in high school and they want to enter a relationship, which is very natural at that stage. However, they find that a lot of girls don't want them, and while that certainly would mean that the person is incel, at the same time, puberty is a time where mentally and physically we are changing constantly. So at the same time, being high school is a very dynamic situation where things change very quickly. So it's very hard to say that a person that is changing so much, both himself and in terms of context, would be an incel. But the exact definition would be someone who is not able to find a person to engage in romantic or sexual relationships.
They see people in society as having different perceptions of the way that relationships work, different ideologies that borrow their names from the movie The Matrix: the blue pill, the red pill, and the black pill. The blue pill is attributed to people outside of incel communities. Normal people, normies. This is the view that personality is the most important factor when it comes to finding a romantic partner. If you just be yourself, someone out there will be attracted to you. Leading on from this, the red pill asserts that instead of men's inherent personalities, their looks and attitudes are more important when approaching women. This approach places importance on the way men style themselves, dress, and act. Finally, the black pill is the most fatalistic worldview. It states that the only thing that truly matters is attractiveness. One's face and body structure are the driving forces which make women attracted to them. although the red pill beliefs might help somewhat, it hardly matters in the grand scheme of things.
I identify as an incel, an involuntary celibate. I think the main reason for my inceldom is that my social skills aren't good enough to get a partner. If I don't have to talk to people, then I won't. But if I do have to for work or for whatever, then I'll get straight to the point. I guess it might be some form of autism. I get straight to the point and I don't really small talk at all. I don't really socialise at all. I don't go down the pub after work with people or that kind of thing. Anything sort of extracurricular that would take time away from me being in my room or at home or whatever, I just don't do, and I haven't done for many years. In an ideal world, I would like to be with someone, but with how I am, I don't think that'll ever really happen. I don't think that anything would be different if I did get a girlfriend. If I ever did get a partner, they'd have to be very similar to myself, because I'm not particularly interested in changing myself, which is a bit, I don't know if selfish or what, but I don't want to change my personality or hobbies for other people. If I met someone else who was very similar to me, then great, but I wouldn't go out my way to change myself. That being said, I don't approach women because I know I'll get rejected. I don't particularly want to be in a relationship that badly anyway, because it'll take away my personal time.
Recently, incels have seen increased popularity in mainstream media. This is largely due to several men with similar motivations as incels, anger at rejection and misogyny, namely Elliot Rodger and Alec Manassian, who murdered 7 and 10 people respectively. Elliot was idolised following his suicide, with some incels dubbing him Saint Elliot and praising his murderers as revenge against the normies that he perceived as having ruined his life. This has led to a reputation of virgins who act out violently because they can't find partners, a reputation which has then gone on to be associated with the incel community at large.
It's kind of funny because every time that something pops up about incels, it's always so wrong. And, you know, just like you managed to contact me on the website, anyone can do so, and I always answer his emails. So it's so amazing that the media hasn't tried to get in touch with me more. I'm not saying that I'm like the all-important incel in the world, but, you know, considering that I run the most, I guess, important, like, besides the subreddits on Reddit, right? The most important site on the web regarding incels, I'm surprised no one has come to me before. We get very little requests for information. But yes, the media has not, in my opinion at least, portrayed incels nicely at all. In fact, the only time that incels appear on the media is when a massacre happens, which was like twice, I think. And the media the media tries to label a community of thousands and thousands of people as killers for one guy. So that's kind of not nice, to say the least. I mean, I get why the media would do that, obviously, because they're the media and they will always do stuff like that, but, you know, abuse and all that. But if the only time that incels appear on the media is when bad things happen, obviously everyone is going to think that incels are a bad thing. But it's not like that. Well, at least that's what I think.
Although the incel community can be bitter towards outsiders, who they see as having what they lack, the ability to enjoy romantic relationships with somebody, this rage is usually self-contained. They live in a society in which they don't fit, and while there may be a minority of the growing community that are angry at their situation and direct this anger towards others, many of them have accepted their place as self-loathing outcasts and simply choose to despair online about it. But what do outsiders think of the incel movement? There are entire communities built around the mocking of incels, like the Incel Tears subreddit, which takes screenshots of incel comments and shares them for amusement. Popular YouTube philosopher ContraPoints discussed the issue in her video, Incels.
For a significant subset of the incel community, their primary hatred is not directed at themselves, but at women. And they really hate women. We're talking blaming women for rape, saying they deserve to be raped, calls for state-mandated girlfriends and sex slaves, but most of all just a kind of generalized, misinformed rage. They live in this cartoon caricature world where it's easy to avoid thinking of women as fully human. And that's where my sympathy runs dry, because this kind of hatred just needs a spark to turn to violence.
Things could change as the world is beginning to take note of the incel community, since whenever they show up in the media, news broadcasts will inevitably have to try and explain them to their audiences. High-profile killers and banned online communities draw more and more people to find out exactly what incels are. Popular discourse focuses on the negative sides, perhaps forgetting to ask why these men, and some women, become this way and end up trapped in this line of thinking. Maybe the solution is to approach the root of the problem before time runs out.